Welcome everybody, let's start. This is the Bradley Beach Walkable Community Workshop. Thank you for coming. I am Ashna Jain from the Voorhees Transportation Center at Rutgers University. Please make a note that this meeting would be recorded for note-taking purposes and for recording your valuable feedback that we want. By default, you are muted, but please note where that unmute button is on the bottom left-hand side of your screen. We highly value your feedback and your experiences as we'll walk down the corridor during the second half of this presentations. If you have any technical issues, please use the chat box and one of the team members will try to help you out. As we start, Board Administrator David Brown, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Ashton. Just want to welcome everybody today to this very important technical assistance program that the borough has started even prior to my coming. Just want to thank Paula and Liz and all those around Paula and Liz for their leadership in getting us there. We want to thank the collaboration of Sustainable Jersey, the Voorhees Transportation Center at Rutgers University, and the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority for all their assistance in helping the borough through this walkable community workshop. Back to you, Ashley.
Thank you, David. Okay, so here is the agenda. First, we'll start with introductions and some background of this workshop, and then we'll look into what actually a walkable community workshop is, after which we'll go into a training session with some of the basics of complete streets and pedestrian-friendly design. Many of you might already be familiar with it, but this could be like a quick refresher. Then we'll learn how to do and conduct a walk audit, and then we'll actually do it using Google Street View. And in the last part, we'll have a quick debrief of the findings and our next steps. Introductions. So this is the second year of the Complete Streets Technical Assistance Program by the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority, NJTPA. Last year, we worked with 9 communities across the state. North Jersey. And this year we are working with 8 communities, including Bradley Beach. From NJTPA, here we have Peter Bilton representing. Peter, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you, Ashna. So, a few more. As you said, it's a partnership between the Voorhees Transportation, we're the federal authorized metropolitan planning organization for the 13 county region of North New Jersey, also including the city of North Jersey. Overseas, we're a partner with Highway Admission in New Jersey, transportation, federal money, and in Northern New Jersey region to maintain and improve the transportation system. But we're also for agency collaboration and these counties, municipalities, and technical.
Peter, you're breaking up. I wonder if you turn off your video, if we might be able to hear you better.
Sure, I'll give that a try.
Yeah.
When did it? Yeah.
You know what, Peter? Maybe we'll have Keith. Are you available?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, and you're clear.
Okay, good. Sorry about that. Yeah. So I'm gonna guess what Peter was trying to say, and I'll step in. I'm Keith Amos. Peter Bilton is really the project manager for this particular project in Bradley Beach, but we're sharing the role of managing the overall Complete Streets Technical Assistance Program. So North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority, for those not familiar, is the metropolitan planning organization for Northern New Jersey. I heard little snippets in there of Peter trying to explain the 13 county region. We have representation from 13 counties and our two major cities of Newark and Jersey City. Our board has those representatives as well as state agencies, including the NJDOT and NJ Transit. And collectively, they make decisions about allocating federal funding for transportation improvement projects across the region, as well as studies such as this, where we're going to be looking at complete streets and trying to make better connections within communities, as those are kind of the building blocks for regional connectivity for streets that are used by all, that are safe and available, accessible for all users, including bicycles and pedestrians. So here today, we're going to be doing a walkable community workshop. We've partnered with Sustainable Jersey and Voorhees Transportation Center, and they're doing a great job. They're going to walk you through some of the principles and the methodology for doing a walking audit. And if you have any further questions, maybe Peter will come back online with a strong connection.
Thank you, Peter and Keith. Next, we also have Anne Heasley from Sustainable Jersey with us.
Hey everyone, I'm Ann Heasley. I'm Program Manager for Policy and Planning, and Sustainable Jersey is providing support for this project. I'm the contact for the municipality, so you've already received some emails from me and you'll receive some follow-up emails. So that's our role in the project, and we look forward to working with you further on this. Thanks, Ashna.
Thank you. And then I'm Ashna Jain from the Voorhees Transportation Center, and I have my colleagues here, Lisa Cintron.
Hi, I'm Lisa Cintron from the Voorhees Transportation Center. I'll be helping out with this presentation and the follow-up report.
Yes, and we also have James Sinclair with us.
Hi, my name is James Sinclair. I work with Ashna and Lisa, and I'll mostly be listening in today.
Yeah, thank you. And we also have a graduate student assistant with us who will be taking notes. Before we move on, I also want to mention that we have state DOT and Monmouth County representatives on the call as well, joining us. And yeah, thank you for that. Yeah. So now we want to get to know more about you, and we would like if in the chat box you could type your name, how long have you lived in Bradley Beach, and how often do you walk around the town, or specifically Main Street. Give some time. I don't see the chat box. And could you like summarize the feedback? Yeah.
Sure. As people sign into the chat. So we're just asking you if you can take a minute to put your name in the chat box. Great. And your role in the community, that'd be really helpful. So we have.
Yeah,
yep.
And how long have you lived in Bradley Beach, and how often do you walk around the town, and specifically Main Street?
So we have some responses in. Renu Shanakar from Monmouth County Engineering. Sorry if I mess up names. I'm not great at pronunciation, but he also notes that he is not a resident. We do have Christine Bell, who's the planner for the borough, and also I think Leon with Leon Avacon Inc. We have Bill Revere from NJDOT, Inez Altamose. She's owned a house since 1999. She doesn't walk Main Street much unless there's a special event. We have Easy Ride TMA. We have Lisa Lee, who's the Safe Routes and to School coordinator, as well as Jeff Curtis, who is a has lived, I guess, owned in Bradley Beach. So I guess that means a resident since the mid 80s, and he walks around periodically. Belle DeGenars lived in town for about 4 years and often walks around Main Street, going to the restaurants and other businesses.
Awesome.
Len Gouda, the chief of police, a lifelong resident. Dana Makadis, Bradley Beach Department of Public Works Secretary. Meredith DeMarco from the Environmental Commission, the Main Street Task Force, the Planning Board, and the BBCA, and she uses Main Street every day, and she's lived in the town for 10 years. Liz Hernandez, who's the facilitator for the Main Street Task Force in the Monmouth County Health Department, and has lived in Bradley Beach for 25 years and lives on Main Street.
Oh, wow.
Linda Curtis, Bradley Beach, resident for 7 years, owner for 35 years, rarely walks Main Street, though visits the bank and the post office. And Catherine Smith has lived here for 4 years full-time and daily year-round, and walks on Main Street 2 to 3 times a week. Latoya Howard. We also have Paula Gavin, who's lived part-time in Bradley Beach for 25 years and walks and loves walking the borough, I think. Lenore Dekovisky has owned a house here for 17 years and 3 years a full-time resident and walks around regularly. And Latoya Howard notes that she's from Easy Ride and she's the bike and pedestrian team assistant coordinator. James Bonanno, Montgomery County Planning and Asbury Park resident who often walks along Main Street to get to businesses in Bradley Beach. Alan Gubitoso, the council member and liaison to the Main Street Task Force, uses Main Street every day. Kathy Deek is a 15-year resident who walks Main Street daily. T. Cone lives 120 paces from Main Street and walks it every day and has owned a commercial property on Main Street since 1995 and has many opinions on planning concepts for the corridor. So this is a great group of people that clearly know this corridor. This is going to be a great workshop. So again, apologies for messing up the pronunciation, but when we get to the participation part, you can definitely provide your actual pronunciation of your name.
Yeah.
That's what we got.
Thank you, Anne. And yeah, we look forward to hearing from all of you. This sounds great.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I don't know how to send to the chat group. I've written everything down, but I don't know how to send it to you or to post it on the group, Zoom chat group.
I think if you hit return or enter.
Oh, something. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Let's see if that, sorry, okay.
That's okay. Let's see if that worked.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have Eileen Shishis, the volunteer lifetime resident, I believe, and walks around town daily. Thank you, Eileen.
And it looks like Keith has his hand up. I think Keith wants to say something.
Oh, no, I just saw Eileen raising her hand, so I wanted to give her a chance to talk.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Great. So now that we know each other, let's talk about why we are all here and what is a Walkable Community Workshop. In this workshop, we will learn about complete streets and walkability, and there will be plenty of breaks for questions during this presentation part. Then we'll learn how to conduct a walk audit. And during this part, this is where we need your contribution, and we want your experience living there help us and come up with some insights and recommendations. We'll take an in-depth look at the corridor using Google Street View. We'll see what is working and what needs improvement based on the presentation and the things that we covered. And we'll share a vision for a safer and healthier community. In Main Street context, we'll specifically also look for aesthetics and appearance related opportunities. And lastly, after the walk audit, we'll come back and summarize the findings and share, have a small discussion on the community priorities. So let's get started. As we mentioned, this section will cover on what complete streets are, and many of you might already be familiar with it, but these are the basics that we need to keep in mind and look for during the walk audit, and that's why it's important that all of us are on the same page. Complete streets are designed and operated for the safety of all users. Pedestrians, bicyclists, motorists, trucks, and public transit users should be able to move along and across a street, complete street, safely. And it makes it easy to cross the street, walk to shops, and bicycles to work. It offers many travel choices, connects to a wider network of transportation system, is fully accessible to all regardless of how you get around, and it varies according to context. And this is really important because it depends on the needs of a community. And so how it looks in Manhattan would be very different than how it looks in Bradley Beach. As an end goal, it improves safety for everyone. Its benefits are really wide and varied. It promotes healthy lifestyle by giving active mode of transportation as an alternative, provides important connection to local destinations such as the businesses on Main Street, creates more livable communities, reduces traffic congestion, again by giving alternatives to driving, reduces reliance on fuel and greenhouse gas emissions. And it also makes fiscal sense because incorporating sidewalks and bike lanes in the planning and design of a street initially could save you the cost of retrofitting later on. And it also encourages economic investment in the community. But how does Complete Street help you achieve these benefits? The thing is, design affects what we do and how we do it and how happy we are doing it. Look at this top photo from Bradley Beach. Does this look like a place where you would want to walk or drive? And this is why if you design and build for cars, you get cars. And if you build for people, you do get people. Let's take an example of a behavior that we are all familiar with, speeding. So the question is, why do people speed? And it is because the design of a road, the wider lanes and wider roads make it seem to people that it is okay and safe to speed. So the design tells them that it's okay and they speed. Here is a real world example. These 4 segments are from Route 9 in Ocean County. And what we want you to is look at these images, each of these images, and think in your mind what the speed limit on each of these roads sections is, starting from like image 1 to 2, and lastly 3, and the last image 4. Now we will look at the actual speed limit on these images. It may be really hard to tell, but like given the design of these sections, but the speed limit on each of these roads is very different. It varies from 50 to 25 miles per hour. But the thing is, if you want drivers to slow down, you usually need more than just a speed limit sign. And you should take this into account when you plan and design your community's roads. Later in this presentation, we will cover some of the designs that help you slow drivers down. Pedestrian-friendly design. Since this is a walkability workshop, and on Main Street, we also have a very heavy focus on pedestrian-friendly design. Let's look into what it is and how do you get people to walk places. But Just before we jump into it, let's look into what pedestrian-friendly design is not. And here is an example. Does it look like a place where you would want to walk, take a stroll, go for an evening walk? Most likely not. And this is the first and foremost thing, that pedestrian-friendly places are spaces that encourage strolling. These are spaces where you enjoy walking. And we will look into what do these places offer. They offer interesting things to look at. They give plenty of space to walk, places to sit, shade, and natural beauty and interesting architecture. Art and fashion could also be incorporated in these spaces to make them even more interesting. These spaces engage all the senses. They get you to look up from your phones and see around. And I think like on Main Street during the audit, we should keep these things in mind and look for opportunities where we can implement such things. And similarly, as we discussed before, design affects behavior, and how design could affect speeding, design could also affect walking. For instance, look at this building, and if you enter it, would you want to take the elevators or take those step-pressing stairs, which are on like probably the side of the building? Most likely the elevators, because the design here points you to this big, huge, shiny lobby with the elevators. On the flip side, in this building, would you take the stairs? Most people here would take the stairs. Like for sure, it'll have elevators for as an option for anyone who needs it, but the design here points to the stairs, and most people will most likely do it. Design also affects our perception of distance. And what is too far to walk? Is a quarter mile too far, or it's a half mile too far? Did anyone here go shopping on a busy shopping day or Black Friday and had to park on the farthest end of the mall? And didn't that walk from your parking spot to the mall feel too long? It felt too far. But wait, once you get inside the mall, you walk there for hours without even thinking about it. This is because the people who are designing the mall know what they are doing, and they are using the same design decisions we talked about before. Their malls engage all your senses. They provide a comfortable temperature, although this is one thing that we cannot control in outdoor spaces. They also provide seating. They are well lit and feel safe, and they have interesting things to look at. And keep these things in mind as we talk about the public spaces and also do our walk audit. Here we'll look into what, like how a pedestrian realm is defined on a street. It goes on from the property line to the curb, and it's divided into 4 zones, subzones. The first one is the frontage zone, which is right in front of the building, where you'll have all the entering and exiting, and sometimes extra things like planters, or in the context of Main Street, you'll have like shops, showpieces, or maybe some seating. Then we have the throughway zone, which is the actual walking area of the sidewalk. After that, there's the furnishing zones with the trees, trash cans, and in today's COVID-19 context, outdoor seating. After which there is the edge zone, where we have the curb and the parking meters. We'll talk about ADA in the context of pedestrian safety and infrastructure later on. Pedestrian amenities are also really important. As we discussed, walking can be made more comfortable by thinking about these features. And which ones you install depends on the context, but the more comfortable it is to walk, the more people are likely to do it. And we have a lot of choices here, like we need to look for how wide the sidewalk space is so that people can walk together. Does it provide shade and shelter, seating spaces, proper lighting and signages, and trash cans, bicycle parking, and things like that. And these amenities are also really, could be really useful to install on Main Street, and we could look for these things in the walk audit. Pedestrian safety is an important feature, and a complete street, as we mentioned, considers the safety of all users, and that includes people with disabilities. ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, sets rule on how to design public spaces to be accessible. And it's like, if the design is proper, we don't see people walking on the street. If the sidewalk is there, but people are still walking on the street, it's most likely because the design of the sidewalk has some issues in it. So here are the basics. Sidewalks need to be at least 36 inches, which is like 3 feet in width, but the wider, the better. And the standard is 5 feet. We also need to consider the usable width, because if the sidewalk is next to a wall or next to a traffic lane, then the usable width is slightly less. Then as we conduct the audit, we should think about those in wheelchairs, and is the sidewalk wide enough for them? Is there a slope? Are there obstructions like cracks or steps or open drains that could make it not usable for them? And also think about how the blinds navigate. Are there protruding objects that could hamper their safety? Maintenance is another important element. Even if a sidewalk was originally built correctly, it may no longer be accessible due to degraded maintenance. So we need to look for, is the surface smooth? Are there any other issues? And during the walk audit, we want to record all of these problems. Driveways is another element along a sidewalk, and that could have issues like steep grade and cross slopes that can be dangerous for all users, but particularly those with limited mobility. As you walk down the corridor, think about what it would feel like to walk along a slanted sidewalk with a stroller or a wheelchair. Because slopes usually require wheelchair users to work against gravity to maintain their balance, and can cause a wheelchair user to veer towards the curb and onto the street. Although this is one thing that, like, the slope cannot be controlled in every single environment, but every effort should be made to provide as level a surface as possible. And lastly, sidewalks should not stop at driveways. Every intersection also presents a serious challenge for the disabled. And are the ramps there built correctly, oriented the right way? We don't need to be an engineer to immediately spot a ramp that does not meet standards, like that in the first photo. And if we compare it with the second photo, we see that the slopes do not match the standards. So the ramps should face the crosswalk and should not be too steep, must have a smooth transition to the asphalt, and must have truncated domes. Those yellow bumpy strips here, so the blind know that they're about to leave the sidewalk and enter the roadway. Crosswalk visibility is another factor that can help improve pedestrian safety at intersections, because the more visible the crosswalk, the more visible the pedestrian would be. And this is a very quick and low-cost way to improve safety. The top one here is a standard crosswalk. The second one is a continental, and the last one is a ladder crosswalk. And it's like, again, the more the paint, the more the visibility. And one thing to note here is that the ladder crosswalks, the last one, they may trap water in winters that could freeze. Here are 3 images of crosswalk treatments that we find in New Jersey, including textured crosswalks, raised intersections that also slow vehicles down, and in-pavement lighting. Crosswalks should follow the path pedestrians take. They should not expect the pedestrians to detour, and it should be well lit from above. Its width should depend on pedestrian volume, and safety islands could be helpful in the case of a wider street. Sidewalk extensions is another treatment that helps you improve safety. They reduce vehicle speeds, decrease crossing distances, limit illegal parking near corners, and improve visibility. They also provide extra sidewalk space that you could use for beautification purposes, like some beautiful plantings or some artwork or signages. And they could be designed keeping the bus and truck traffic in mind. Here is an example how sidewalk extension helps in improving safety because of illegal parking. It shows that like parking close to crosswalks could limit visibility for all the users present on the road. For instance, this car is almost half a car distance from the crosswalk, but the driver cannot see that there are people who are about to enter the crosswalk. And similarly, the people also cannot see the driver in the car clearly. And this is why like preventing this parking near crosswalks could improve the visibility for all roadway users. This is a real world example of this problem. Could you see that there is a pedestrian who is about to enter the crosswalk? Yep, it's like a pedestrian right behind this car, kind of hidden, and we cannot see it. And hence, in situations like this, we could use things like bike corrals or parklets or curb extensions to improve safety and eliminate this dangerous situation because of parking near crosswalks. This slide shows a variety of ways in which sidewalk extensions could be implemented, going from high-cost ways in the top left image with more permanent concrete and planting treatments to a more low-cost way in the bottom right-hand side picture you could see with paint and bollards. Lastly, we could combine these curb extension treatments with more expensive infrastructure like a hog signal that stops the traffic before a pedestrian gets into the road. And also a diagonal crossing could be an option on a busy intersection where you have a lot of pedestrian traffic from one corner to the other. On such intersections, a leading crosswalk gives pedestrian the green light before the cars. So let's pause for a minute, and before we go on to the next section, any questions about sidewalks and pedestrians or any of these treatments? Okay, none? Okay, let's move on. Lisa will start on with the next slide.
Okay, so I know we're talking about a walk audit here, but we're thinking about the streets completely. So we want to think about all roadway users. So we're going to spend a little time talking about bicycles. So designing for bicycles means reducing conflict, creating visibility, and and establishing clear guidelines on the right of way. So it's just like for pedestrians. So who here knows the laws related to where bicycles can ride in New Jersey? Like what roads are they allowed on or not allowed on? Or where are they allowed to ride or not? Does anyone want to hop in and give an answer? So I don't know if anyone answered anything in the chat, but bicyclists are basically allowed to ride on every road except for the interstate highways. So some state highways. In Bradley Beach, I believe bicycles are allowed on all the roadways. So how can we make riding a bicycle safer? So there are a bunch of design options, including sharrows, bicycle boulevards, bicycle lanes, protected bicycle lanes, and we'll go through all of these. So we'll start by talking about shared lane markings. So as you can see in the photo here on the right, in Patterson, there's a sharrow on the road that basically just signals to the driver and the bicyclist as well that the bicycle has access to the whole roadway. And it keeps them from riding, it keeps the bicyclist maybe from riding too close to the edge of the roadway, which is a dangerous situation. So here you can see a few super sharrows. It's an experimental treatment that basically just increases the visibility of the sharrow, but it's the same idea. It shows where the bicycle is allowed to ride. If we take it a step further, we can look at bicycle boulevards. They use a combination of signage and other design treatments that basically prioritize the bicycle travel. So it's usually on secondary roads, slower roadways, and the common treatments include extra large sharrows, like you can see on this top picture here, slow speed limits. So this one roadway here is only 15 miles per hour, and mini roundabouts like this third picture, and traffic diverters are in the third picture that basically allow bicyclists through onto the street, but not cars. So they can be a great way to create an attractive bicycle route to popular destinations. So if you're looking to make it safer for people to get to a nearby elementary school or a high school or a community center or something, it's an option. So bicycle lane is a space that's designated only for bicyclists. So you need at least 4 feet next to the curb and at least 5 feet if there's on-street parking. But the larger the bicycle lane, the better. So you can see here, this bicycle lane in Cherry Hill is just marked basically in the shoulder space of the roadway. But if you add a buffer, like in this picture to the left, it makes it even safer for different levels of bicyclists. So a protected bicycle lane adds even more safety by putting a barrier between the bicyclist and the motorist. Like you can see, it can be as simple as some paint on the street, or even you can see in the one picture, it's a cement curb that separates the bicyclist from the vehicle traveling. So you'll need at least 8 feet, and they work best if there aren't many driveways or turning conflicts along the way. And special care really needs to be taken at intersections, and you can see in this third picture, the dotted lines through the intersections, and then the different treatment at the corner of the intersection. And even further in the direction of safety are bicycle paths. So they allow two-way traffic, and they can be used in the roadway, they can be used next to the roadway, but you need at least 10 feet. And it's important, again, on these bicycle paths to minimize the turning conflicts along the way. Some additional bicycle infrastructure improvements include bicycle boxes, like this image on the left, which basically help bicyclists make left turns at lights. It creates a safe space for them and signifies to cars too to make space for them. It reduces turning conflicts. So bike parking is also important, as Ashna mentioned earlier. You have bike corrals that can also help with pedestrian infrastructure as well. So this on-street bike corral here is signified with some pavement treatments and some bicycle parking. Any questions on bicycle infrastructure before we head into the next topic? No? Okay. Let's go over public transportation. So many of the pedestrian improvements that we've talked about also relate to public transportation, because anytime you're headed to a bus stop or to a train station, you're most likely also going to have to cross a crosswalk at least. So I think about 7% of Bradley Beach residents use public transportation to get to work. So what are the key components of a successful transit system? It's got to be reliable, frequent, and provide comfortable service. So complete streets can accommodate public transportation passengers and can address some of these components. So we'll go over that, starting with comfortable service. So picture yourself heading to the bus on a snowy day. Which stop here would you prefer to use? Which one would make you more comfortable? So bus shelters, like the one pictured on the left, provide a place for passengers to wait and sit in comfort and security. They're protected from the elements, from rain, from snow, or even from the hot sun. And they should include seating, lighting, travel information is excellent. Even if they could include real-time travel information, that would be excellent too. But all stops must at least be accessible to all users. So they have to include those with limited mobility. So well-designed and visible signage and enhanced informational displays, including real-time bus schedules and information, they dramatically improve the quality of the transit surface. And if you're in an area with a high amount of transit service, a high number of bus stops, it might make sense to include marked bus lanes. So they just provide a dedicated space on the roadway for the buses in the street. And it's usually distinguished by colored pavement, different textured pavement, and signage as well too. So bus lanes should be at least 11 feet wide, and when there is no buffer, and they can be a little bit narrower if there is a buffer present, but these are only for areas with high volumes of bus service. So any questions about public transportation? If not, we'll move.
Lisa,
oh, sorry. Yeah,
I
go
just
ahead.
wanted to mention, I don't know if you can see the chat.
No, I can't see.
Okay, all right. So there were two questions relating to the bicycle lane and biking on Main Street. So one comment was, how can you differentiate between a sole bicycle lane versus a shared lane with cars?
Right. So a shared lane would be just, you would just have those little, maybe I should go backwards to that slide. So for a shared lane, you'll just have these markings along the way, like on this bottom photo here, that just say to share the road. And actually you can include signs that say, please share the road with bicyclists. And then a bicycle lane would be a separate space just for bicycles. And in fact, cars aren't supposed to drive on them. So, well, here are some separated bicycle lanes. And so just visually, they look very different. So the one cars can drive over and the other cars can't drive over.
And then there's another comment, I find biking on Main Street terrifying. What are the pros and cons to bike lane to the left or right of parking?
Oh, so if the bicycle lane is to the right of the parking, then you have the parking to protect. It acts as a protection. It makes it a protected bike lane in a way. But no matter which side that the bicycle lane is on, you will always have to worry a little bit about getting doored. So if someone opens the door without checking the bicycle lane, and that's sort of a cultural shift where you need to have people checking for bicyclists before they open the door. But if you have a brightly marked bicycle lane, that's one visual cue to check for the bike before someone pulls in. But that's a great question. Either side of the parking, if you have it on the left of the parking, then you're not really protected from the traveling traffic, but it is an option as well.
And then we have another comment that when we lobbied for a bike lane, we were told there was not enough room, so we were given the bike sharrows.
Lisa, I just wanted to add that the bike lane on the right of the parking does require it to be a little wider, so you need even more space than you would to the left. So that's one of the considerations, it's just the amount of road width available.
Yeah, and so when we put together our recommendations for the final report, we'll take a close look at the width of the road. But it sounds like, I can't remember off the top of my head. Ashna, do you remember how wide it is?
I think it was 46 feet at the minimum.
Right, and you can also consider possibly, this is kind of a touchy subject, but maybe removing parking on one side of the street and creating additional parking in another area. That's one way to deal with not enough space. Do we have any other questions?
No, but I think we could get a lot of comment on that based on the facial images I just saw. So
I'm not saying that we have to do that. It's just an option.
We'll talk about that when we walk.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so then we're going to talk quickly about reducing speeds. So if we look at design for lower speeds, the wider the roadway, the faster people are able to travel. So usually you see a 13-foot wide lane for major highways, 11 feet for faster roadways, and 10 feet for local roadways. So aside from lowering the lane width, you can narrow the view with vertical design to make it feel like you're going faster. So what you can see here, you have these mature trees. that provide a vertical design element that as you're driving through this street in Hopewell Borough, it feels like you're going a lot faster than you really are because the trees are passing you at giving you a visual cue of maybe how fast you may be traveling. So there are a few other ways to slow down drivers using modern design as well. So let's talk about some infrastructure solutions to manage speeding. You have one option are road diets. So they're a popular strategy for roads that are much wider than they really should be. So the most common type takes a 4-lane road and converts it to 2 lanes. So then you have a center lane for turning, and then you have room for maybe bicycle lanes or some added sidewalk space. So this can actually reduce congestion in an area with a lot of turning, left-hand turns, and it drastically increases the safety for all users. However, other road diets can reallocate space for parking, wider sidewalks, you can have green space added, or you can include bicycle facilities. So the idea is just to ensure that the roadway is designed for all users. So everybody knows about the speed bump. So they can be really effective, but they're also pretty controversial. So many public works departments dislike them though because of plowing issues, especially in New Jersey. And they can't be used on roadways with frequent emergency vehicles. They can also be pretty noisy if you have a wide volume of truck traffic in the area. So they're pretty low cost and pretty effective, but a bit controversial. You have speed bumps that are cushions too. Sorry, speed cushions. And what they do is they allow you to go 20 miles an hour instead of 10 miles an hour. And emergency traffic can go between the bumps instead of having to ride right over the bump, which makes it more accessible for emergencies. So then we also have speed control raised crosswalks. So a speed table is flat on top and it can be used to build a crosswalk that's level with the sidewalk on either side. This adds visibility. A pedestrian entering this crosswalk is higher up, so easier to see over maybe some parked cars nearby. And it helps those in wheelchairs or pushing strollers because they don't have to navigate through the ramps. So in terms of horizontal speed control, we have chicanes or neck downs. They're basically a series of raised or delineated curb extensions. You can see them, excuse me, on the left and right here. They just narrow they don't narrow the travel lane, but they narrow the roadway so that it feels a little bit less comfortable to travel as fast. So these photos are of a recent project in Morristown. And you can see it from another angle here where it just narrows the road a little bit to help slow traffic down by creating these pinch points. So this chicane here is a bit more advanced. You really have to, it changes the travel lane. So you have to navigate as the driver through around this turn, which makes you slow down a bit more. So then we have at intersections, you can adjust the turning radius. So if you look at the first line of bricks, it looked like originally maybe that was where the turn was, and you could take that turn at a pretty high speed, but since they've extended this curb, you have to slow down quite a bit more to make this turn here. It also shortens the crossing for pedestrians as well. And again, as we mentioned in the bicycle boulevard section, traffic diverters are also a great way to restrict a roadway to only local traffic and bicyclists. And you can also notice on the right here, the planting, which speaks to our next topic of green infrastructure. So you can use green infrastructure elements, these plantings, you can incorporate them into the project design and they provide environmental benefits. So they reduce stormwater runoff and flooding, and they achieve long-term savings in infrastructure costs. So building these horizontal traffic calming is a great opportunity to replace some pavement with some greenery and beautify an area. So do we have any questions about speeding? And I don't know if there's anything in the comments, but no? Oh, you're muted, Anne.
Sorry, there is another comment back to Main Street about possibly making it one way. So something we can talk about when we do our walk.
Oh, absolutely. We can, on the talk, we will discuss. Okay, so let's talk quickly about street lighting. So while we're going to be conducting this audit during the day, it's really important to remember that day and night conditions can differ dramatically. So lighting is not only a safety issue in terms of visibility, but it also provides security by making the area more visible, basically increasing the eyes on the street and allowing the pedestrians to feel safer in a given area. So if you just take a quick note in this image here, the taller light up top that hangs over the roadway, this is in your walk audit form, this is called a cobra light. So when we ask if there's any cobra lights on the street, this is what we're talking about. Whereas that lower light that's aimed more just in the pedestrian realm is a pedestrian oriented lighting. And here's just an image of a nighttime corridor where you have some incidental lighting coming from different storefronts and houses and things, but it's simply not enough. It's not a uniform lighting of the streetway. And especially there isn't enough lighting specifically over the crosswalks too. So street lighting come in many shapes and sizes, like in that first picture. It's important though to think about how lighting impacts neighbors too. So the type of lighting on the left is very popular in New Jersey, but it might not be so helpful to light up the sky rather than lighting up the pedestrian realm, as this picture on the right does. So now I'm going to pass it back over to Ashna to go over the walk audit.
Okay, yeah. So, all right, now that we know what to look for and what to think about during the walk audit, let's quickly review some points and tips for conducting the walk audit. Firstly, photos and your notes conducting the walk audit are incredibly valuable. So if you see a problem, if you see an opportunity or have an idea in a place, then it'll be great if you could send your photos of that place to us, along with your walk audit forms that we will discuss shortly. Next is talking to the people using the street, like talking to the businesses on the street and having and learning more about their experiences. Also using tools to measure. So if you have a ruler or if you measure something, measure the size of a crack or something like that, these detailed informations are also really valuable. And of course, always be careful with the traffic while you are on road conducting the audit. And a quick word about photos. While it's really important to show a problem, context is valuable. And when looking at these photos in the future, we should be able to remember where they were exactly taken. So take a lot of photos to grab the context of an issue and add scale. Sometimes, like I mentioned, bringing a ruler can help measure a deficiency. And as you also take photos, jot down the addresses where they are located to make it even easier to remember where these were taken and where the problem is exactly located. Yeah. And now we are gonna start conducting the audit. And just before we do that, I'll share the walk audit form with you. Okay. What just happened?
Are you able to get to the chat?
No.
Okay, I'll resend that. And I see that Paula's raising her hand. I think she might have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be sure as you introduce the walk audit, what we're going to do today versus post, because I know we get to submit them. But I also wanted to say that we are interested in appearance issues. So as we look at these elements, which were great, you did a great job in presenting them, we also want to make sure we're thinking about appearance and how do we create a feeling for our town on Main Street. So both things, if you could address the filling the audit out today versus future, and then how we can address appearance issues.
Yeah, so I think as we walk down the corridor on Google Street View, let's keep those things in our mind. And if at any point you have any ideas of, oh, here, could be a great seating space, or here we could have a sidewalk extension with some greenery space, adding those functional elements and safety elements, but combining them with aesthetics and appearance, we could note down, and those insights, because you use that space on an everyday basis, could be really helpful. Okay.
So basically we're asking people today to comment verbally as we walk through the corridor, but then afterwards there's 3 different links. They got a little smushed here, but there's a link to an audit form that's a PDF. There's a link to an audit form that's in Word. And then we have an online form that you can use. So if you want to go out after today's workshop and walk the corridor live and note some things that we might not have seen today, you could use either one of those forms, and we'll talk about how to share that with me at the end. So does everybody understand what we're doing?
Paula, again, just maybe one more clarification. Then after we submit the audits, what happens after that? You're going to go over that also.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay, I'll quickly go through the walk audit form. Here is what it looks like. And as Anne mentioned, there is a link in the chat box. It'll go through the corridor from Monmouth Ave to Ocean Park Ave in 3 sections. And for each of the section, you'll have questions related to the design of the road, driver behavior related issues and observations, condition of the sidewalk, curb cuts and ramps near intersections, signage, any observations on signage, parking related observations, amenities, if you feel like there is a place where you could use extra amenities, and lighting issues. So, and lastly, trees, so some like greenery and planting spaces. And then you'll have the same questions again for the next sections, and with some additional space for comments, you can provide your feedback and what you would like to see, and we can include those things and ideas in the recommendations. We also have a online Google form version of the audit form, which takes you through the same questions on internet, on Google. And the link is in the chat box. So yeah, let's get started with the walk audit. We are here on Main Street and looking to Monmouth Ave. Yeah, and this is where we want you to unmute yourself and think about your experiences as we walk down. And if you have any observations, if you have any comments, any feedback, everything is important. If you don't want to speak up, please type them in the chat so we have them recorded, and we'll include all of these ideas and recommendations in the final report. So here we are on Main Street at Monmouth Ave. And I think this is a recreational complex right here. Does anyone have any comments or ideas walking down the street from this intersection?
We've been asking for ladder crosswalks on all non-signalized intersections on Main Street. So yes. This right here is a perfect example of you're walking children to a recreational complex, and I don't see a sign that says that it's a crosswalk warning you ahead of time. And there's also no ladder crosswalking. I find it to be very dangerous. There's also no truncated domes. I've had this conversation with Crystal Sections from the New Jersey DOT, who handles the handicapped stuff. DOT did a little bit of work, but this is one perfect example of more we're gonna see. So I appreciate the background you gave us going forward.
Yeah, and for Main Street, since there is a heavy focus on appearance, would you be interested in having some like innovative or creative designs for the crosswalk? This could be a place to add some artistic work. Do you have any thoughts, any comments? on those ideas?
I just worry about because it is a state highway, we are much more limited than many other county or municipal roads. So, I mean, whatever we do, it has to be approved by the DOT and possibly fabricated by them.
Yes.
This is Al Gubitosi. Another comment that we'll probably want to address throughout our walkability stroll here is the fact that we really have relatively narrow streets that don't really effectively accommodate bicycle traffic. I'm not quite sure what the solution is, but especially in this rec area, it would be great if there was some opportunity to create greater bicycle safety measures and perhaps bicycle parking.
Yes, we can definitely cover bicycle infrastructure and bicycle facilities in the final recommendations. And since we also have a webinar before the draft report, this could be a great point to discuss more about specific recommendations that we can give. Yeah, so any other comments, any other feedback before we move on?
I wanted to point out that in front of the rec center, there's a yellow curb that goes, I think it's like 3 or 4 car lengths. And I think to speak on what Al was talking about, that would probably be a perfect place for like a bicycle corral or something like that.
Yes, great idea.
Also, if we could just take note of the street light to the right there, that is a street light from the original 1997 Main Street renovation. It's down lighting. I find it to be very effective for pedestrians, but as we go forward, you'll see lights that were replaced, which are more up lighting or scattered lighting, which I don't believe are as attractive or as efficient lighting wise.
Yes. Yeah, and these match the lighting style that Lisa mentioned in the presentation, like lighting the footpath instead of lighting the sky. Yes. Yeah.
I'm wondering, this is Al Gubitosi again, and I know we're just starting the tour, but throughout our Main Street vicinity, I'm just wondering if we could have better signage. For example, I was just mentioning we need greater bicycle safety. A significant challenge in the borough is we have a lot of people who ride their bicycles on the sidewalks.
Yes.
So along with clearly delineated bicycle lanes, I wonder if there could also be better signage, both speed limits as well as what we expect of cyclists in terms of traffic safety.
Yes. Yeah. And as I'm familiar, I think Bradley Beach has an ordinance and it has like signs prohibiting or like not asking bicyclists to stay on the road than on the sidewalk.
I think our signage could be maybe clearer and maybe more prominent.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Speed limit.
This is Paul. I think the question about, creative markings on the streets, the point on lighting, the point on trees, the point on signage, all of those things, if we could add uniformity and add some creativity, could create a town look. So every one of these areas, recommendations that are enabling us to have a town look that we find appealing and reinforcing to our image, I think would be great.
Yes, this is a great idea. We can definitely include it in our recommendations to tie all of these elements and recommendations together.
There's one more comment I'd like to make while we're on this particular slide, and that is we're likely to see, again, throughout the Main Street landscape, businesses that have unattractive, whether it be facades or in this case, to the far right, you can see a tire display that's basically right on the sidewalk. And I'm just wondering if there might be things we could do to create, more attractiveness by better managing, how the businesses display some of their wares.
Great point. we can definitely cover that. Displays.
I just wanted to mention, just to go back to, you're not supposed to ride your bike on the sidewalk. Riding your bike down the middle of Main Street is terrifying.
Right.
So, and the number of people who walk on the sidewalk is not very many, at least not off summer months. And as you can see, riding your bike in front of that truck would be terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we can definitely look into bicycle infrastructure and facility options that could be feasible for a road with this much traffic and this road width in our study and recommendations. Yeah. Okay. Any other comments before we move forward? Okay.
Well, what is that supposed to be about?
I think, could you increase your volume?
Oh, I'm sorry. I have to face the, why are there cones, those orange cones on the right and the left? What is that about?
Does anyone have answer to that question? I'm guessing they are put on the road in some situations, in some cases, but
we have cone pollution many times. I mean, cone should be up for 2 or 3 days till the item is fixed, but we end up with cone pollution where they're out there for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. And, sometimes on my walks, I'll corral them in and drop them behind the police station because I find them offensive. When they're not
Yeah, exactly. I like that, cone pollution.
Okay.
Hey, Ashna, because the rec center is there, is it possible a crossing guard or someone else is using those cones to help people get to the rec center?
I'm not aware of it. I've never seen a crossing guard there.
During
summer camp, they are put there.
In the summertime, there is a crossing guard there. I actually live like 2 houses down from the rec center. And they do put the cones in, like out, like a car length out, I guess. So you could see that there's a crosswalk there when the kids are coming to and from the summer camp. So if that was a summertime day when that image was taken, that could be why the cone pollution is there. A new term, TJ.
I think crossing guards are also taught to put the cones about, at least about 100 feet back so that they know when it's safe for them to step out with their signs. You have to give cars stopping distance, enough stopping distance to slow down. So they're supposed to use those as a marker if it is a crossing guard cone.
Yes.
And it looks like this picture was taken in August, so it is summer. And maybe a curb extension, a permanent sidewalk extension would help in terms of give people more space and also remove the need for having those cones.
The other issue, I'm going to keep coming back to bicycle safety. You can see the little bicycle path symbols in the middle of the road on each side.
Yes.
And as Linda Curtis mentioned, you really take your life in your hands if you're following these signs, given that we have very congested traffic in the summer and I just don't think any cyclist is going to feel comfortable riding out somewhat in the middle of the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Let's move forward. And we are walking towards Evergreen Ave.
Okay. So this is just a question. Is there parking on both sides of the road in this area?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
What is the speed limit?
30.
30.
30.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So moving forward, does anyone have any comments for the street sections here, the sidewalks with the parking and 2 lanes? Any observations? How does walking on the sidewalk here feels like?
This is Lenore Dukowski.
Yes.
I just wanted to say that, I mean, when we talked about walking, there are totally different amounts of crowds and walking based on the block you're on because of the services. I mean, everybody knows that the bagel shop, which is on this block we've been looking at, it's a madhouse certain times of day all year, and it's a madhouse in the summer, whereas you could walk 50 feet and there's no pedestrian traffic because there aren't any services there that are either open at certain times or popular or something like that.
Great, thanks.
That's a good observation.
Yeah, yeah.
TJ Cohen, and on the right-hand side here is the. Actually, no. It's for the next. It's for the next street. My notes for the next street. I'm sorry.
Yes. So let's move forward. This intersection with Evergreen we see is a signalized intersection, and it also has pedestrian counters. Do they count for you?
Yeah, well, that's one thing I've contacted the DOT about, is that if you hit the button, it waits for you and then gives you the pedestrian cross sign. But if you get there and the button wasn't pushed, the pedestrian cross sign doesn't come on. And I said, well, now I cross, and somebody making a left-hand turn across the traffic says, hey, wait, you don't have the walk. But the light is green for me. So it's very confusing, I find.
So yeah, so left turns are problems.
But I don't understand why it just does. Like in New York City, it goes cross pedestrian. You know, you don't, whether you push the button or not, it says cross pedestrian. But for some reason, New Jersey doesn't do it that way.
James, could it be like a push operated rather than like a continuous signal that includes pedestrians?
So there's really two types of traffic signal timing. One is that the traffic signal is the same all the time. It's just on a fixed timer. The other one is where it changes its timing based on traffic using sensors. Looking at this signal, it looks pretty old. I don't see any, I don't really see sensors. The cameras don't really look at Main Street, and I don't see anything on the pavement. So it's likely to be on a fixed timer. And if that's the case, the recommendation is for the pedestrian signals to come on normally. If it's on like a demand operated one, then pushing the buttons would be needed to let the signal know a pedestrian is waiting. But if it's on a timer, no, pushing a button should not be required. So that could be a recommendation.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment about the speed.
Yes.
I know this is a state road, and therefore they decide that it's 30 miles an hour. In Hoboken, they took that on by putting up signs that just said 20 is plenty. They couldn't change the speed limit officially, but they just put up signs that said 20 is plenty, and it seems to make a difference.
Oh, okay. Okay. So speeding, yeah.
And Ashna Paula is looks like she wants to make a comment.
Yeah.
There's probably a comment that everybody is thinking, I have a feeling, and that is these views just dramatize the absence of trees. And just the absence of any of the kind of green look we talked about before, and the importance of green streets. It just dramatizes it.
Yes.
Are there, when it rains, are there areas of this roadway that frequently flood, or?
I've never seen flooding on Main Street in Bradley Beach. Not really, even like during Sandy and stuff. It was mainly the flooding was mostly by the beach.
Okay.
May I say something about the condition of the sidewalks? Is it appropriate to address that issue now?
Yes. Yeah.
If you pay attention to the pavers on the sidewalks, and that will be throughout Main Street, they're dirty. They are uneven. They have gum and stains all over. And I just don't think it makes a positive visual. Tree wells are throughout Main Street, are filled with debris. And It's just not attractive. And I think this is a very important issue that we must address.
Yes. That sounds really important, and yeah.
So
we could see
on the opposite side that we're looking at, there's on this corner especially, I don't know if they're on all of the corners. On the left-hand side, there are like little electrical boxes in the sidewalk, ones? And it kind of like sinks like, no, on the left, if you move the screen to the left. See that box there? It's like a beige colored box.
Those are the electrical boxes.
Yeah, they're kind of like sunk in, and the bricks are like kind of like caving in around them.
Yeah, they almost seem like they're almost like a cardboardish type of texture. They're like something recyclable. And to your point, I think if you can step on one, you could get hurt.
They're composite. They're like you know, like the benches at the beach. It's like a composite recycled plastic, I think. But where they are, the bricks are kind of like sunken in. So I don't know if, you know, if they when they installed them, they dug some stuff out. I know they're now sinking in, but
is this the box that you're referring to?
Yeah. And I think there's one on the other side of that crossing as well, if you're going north.
Like here.
On that side.
Right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, if you notice, there's no truncated domes, and this is a very busy intersection, you know, connecting the town. And you're going to find this throughout, and I'll point out a few that DOT did rebuild, which I think worked out pretty well.
I also, this is Meredith speaking, wanted to point out in front of Vic's, if you look, there's a trash can. And the way we have our trash cans designed is there's not a recyclable bin right next to it. It's not a dual trash can. So that's something I know that we would look forward to seeing to kind of help encourage people to recycle.
Yeah. Great point. Recycle bins, dual recycle bins. Okay. That's great and great. Are there any other comments, feedback before we move forward?
I just want to make a follow-up point for something to keep in mind as we walk down the corridor. The team made the point earlier that when thinking about bicycle, and I know that's not the focus today, but when thinking about the bicycle experience, that DOT had installed the sharrows, and that because of the amount of width available between the curbs, and that bicycle lanes weren't able to be accommodated, and we had a good smile, which we have in every meeting that we do about parking. And obviously parking is very important to a downtown street. So as we go along this Main Street, take a look at the parking occupancy in August, and think about a few blocks back, there were spaces where one side of the street was totally devoid of on-street parking at that time. When these photographs were taken, you can see we're coming up on areas where there is more parking occupancy on both sides of the street, but there aren't a lot of options or alternatives to providing bicycle facilities on the street that don't involve removing parking from one side of the street. So there are other things to think about if there are parallel routes to Main Street to provide bicycles, but just think about, take a look at the parking occupancy and think about that kind of trade-off that comes into play whenever we talk about installing bicycle facilities where there aren't any right now.
Yeah. And with that, let's move on to the next intersection, because we do have an observation for that intersection that we can discuss, and it goes with this conversation. Not sure if there's a so this is the next intersection, Main Street with 2nd and 3rd Ave. And here we saw how like 2nd and 3rd Ave kind of merge before coming onto this intersection at Main Street. And both of these roads here are two-way roads. And we do, I think, have an opportunity here of, I let it like come up, yeah. Both of these roads, they are like merging here, creating a Y, and they are two-way. And there is an opportunity here to like make them one-way. And we could also consider other ideas, other recommendations, and have like, instead of parallel parking on both sides, have angled parking, which could provide additional parking here and compensate if there are like any additional ideas for the Main Street that require removing, let's say, 4 or 5 parking spots. So you could have additional parking here and take out some parking on Main Street and be open, like if you want to do that, if those ideas make sense.
The angled parking here is very dangerous.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Like this one?
I believe I agree with this as a parking location. Since the council attempted to purchase Autotech 2 years ago to create like 23 spaces for $800,000, this would be a cheaper alternative to give us space where we don't have to pay for the property, but it also would give us the opportunity to do the sidewalk extensions on both sides here to change the turning radius into this, proposed one-way each way. That would give us space for bike racks on both sides. It would be outside of the Safeway or the right-of-way area for the state DOT. So it would be under our jurisdiction and not theirs, but I think it's a wonderful idea.
Oh, great, thank you.
One thing I've noticed at this intersection currently, and I don't know how it would be affected with a one-way, but when I make a right turn to go down what I know to be 3rd Avenue, and there are cars coming towards Main Street on 2nd Avenue, there doesn't seem to be a good feeling of who has the right of way. And there's often cars crossing my path when I'm just going straight. Do they have the right of way? Do I have the right of way?
So it could, like this intersection could use some signages or some more guidance on how traffic is gonna move generally. Okay, any other comments? And here we do see ladder crosswalks, one of the intersections.
These ladder crosswalks we lobbied very hard for DOT, and they came back and did the truncated domes. And so it's operating much better. But see how they did the truncated domes in concrete on the corner, which really tightened up the pavers nicely. I think it's a much better look. And if you go down a little farther on this right side, I don't know if he completed the work. If you could show the driveway to this coffee shop on the corner. The developer did something different. He put in, he hadn't done the work yet. Okay, this is before the coffee shop was built.
No, I think like the Google Maps went to a previous time.
Oh, okay, because if you go right in front of that pickup truck, there's a curb cut there, and he used concrete instead of the pavers, and it is more of an accurate material for vehicles to pass over than these pavers, which are now over 20 years old. But he did a nice job matching the pavers with the bike racks he added. It really was a very good design.
Yeah, it looks good, like with those patches, and then it repeats, and then the plantery, like it has some symmetry. Thank you, great observation. So
I just have 2 more comments for this section. One is where you see that construction, that will be condos. So when we talk about design and what we're going to see, we should just keep in mind there's going to be more population. And then the second thing is there's no trash cans again on this corner.
Yes. Great point. Thank you.
There's another question I'd like to raise for us to consider, and that is, I'm not sure how consistent we are in creating a sufficient line of sight at the corner. So you can see the yellow curve here is probably 25 feet, but in other areas of town, it's much shorter. And I realize that to expand that line of sight reduces parking, which is, you know, a cardinal sin, of course. But we've got to find some balance between safety and accommodating as much parking as we can.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, Paula Gentempo. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
I think this is an ideal time to bring this up. Is it possible to ask Jersey Central Power and Light to possibly provide a cost for putting all these wires underground?
Like the electricity, these wires?
Yes, all these wires. We have so many of them in town.
It's definitely a recommendation we've made to other communities in their downtowns as well. We can include in the final report, you know, reasoning for why it would make sense. But in the end, it would have to be coordinated with obviously the power company, but also with DOT, because it would have to go under the roadway. But it's definitely a good consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Speaking of wires, is there any way that as we go further down Main Street, we're going to see a lot of, I call them spaghetti wires that are just dangling and they're just wrapped around? Is there any way that we can have the various companies who are responsible for that to make it neater and if they're and clean it up? It isn't a pleasant visual at all. It just looks like a bowl of spaghetti.
Yeah.
So there's a Main Street Association, right? Like a group. Is there a group of businesses that are together that work on Main Street issues, or does anyone know?
Yeah, this is Paula. There is a brand new Bradley Beach Business and Community Alliance, which currently has about 50 of our local businesses plus residents and nonprofits. It was just formed on January 1st.
Oh, so it's brand new. Because a lot of these things fall into issues that a good like business association, like a strong association, could really help push forward too. So in our recommendations, we can specify which types of things would be good to work with the business association with.
Great, thank you.
Great. Okay. Any other comments, feedback on this intersection before we move forward? Okay, great. Let's walk forward. Yeah. Sorry about my internet. I think it's taking a few seconds to load, and the images are blurred right now. Yeah. Does anyone have any comments, any feedback for the sidewalks in this section? Walking here, we see that there's like residential, some houses here on one side, and like looks like mixed use on the other side. Any comments, feedback?
I just want to hear someone mention that some of the pedestrian-oriented down-facing lighting from 1997 was replaced with other kinds, and I did a different sort of lighting fixture. That's a lower fixture to the right of this view. Is that what you were referring to earlier?
Yes.
Yeah.
And again, they don't match, and they're scattered throughout the town. There's probably a dozen of this type.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You notice the wires above it.
Yes.
This is street section 3.
This is street section 1.
Oh. Oops.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're still on street section 1.
Yes, we are still on street section 1, and after this intersection, we'll go into street section 2. Yeah.
It's hard to fill out the form because there are parts where there is a median and there are parts where there is not a median, and you can only choose one answer. just so you know.
Yeah. Okay, like, is that like this within a street section? I mean, always, yeah, I think feel free to like make a note for us. It'll be really helpful if you have any additional feedback. And if you also you can also add the details and those observations in the notes section of the form.
Could you please move the camera back towards the business area?
Here.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That car is parked. I can't. Okay. It's hard to.
What are you looking for?
The tree well's there.
Oh, you can't see it.
You can't see it. Okay.
What would you tell us about them if we could see them?
Well, they're buckled.
Okay.
There wait, I don't have a clear view. Okay, that's one. But on the other side of the road.
If we could hold that picture for a minute, I just wanted to show you one thing. As Ms. Shishius was pointing out about the tree well, there's another one of these electrical boxes. And it's my understanding that these boxes that's in the box that's in the tree well and the other one that was previously mentioned by Ms. Hernandez, I believe they are part of a now abandoned electrical system that was set up in 1997 to illuminate these trees for holidays.
Oh.
So we may be able to get rid of that. That's something we should, Mr. Frieda is on the call. He might have some advice. That was done by T&M Associates Design back in '97. But if we could get rid of those, that would be great.
Oh, great.
So you'd rather get rid of them than light up the trees?
They don't really function.
I mean, they don't function.
I've owned a property with one in front of it, and we've never had lights on it from that source. We've run wires from our building to the tree, which so.
Yeah, we can definitely include that recommendation, and it could like add some extra more.
Can we talk about the sign ordinance now too while we're here? Yeah. Okay, because that's the perfect picture.
Okay, yeah.
There's a sandwich board. We've been having a lot of sandwich boards around town, but there is an ordinance against sandwich boards. So I still don't understand that either.
Really?
Yeah.
So the sign ordinance?
Well, I said that for the benefit of everyone, but also one of the councilmen who's on the call, because I've been asking for a sign ordinance all over town for a while.
In light of the current dining outdoors, we're going to see a lot of people setting up outdoor dining, but we also can see on this block that some of the little food places just stick a little table and chair outside right there. And are there rules about what an outdoor dining space should look like?
Yes, actually, they do get a permit every year for those tables and chairs.
Could we pay attention to that pole and all the wires? See all of that?
Yeah.
Not very attractive looking. I wish that car wasn't there right now, because that's the tree that I'm talking about, where it has a the side, the papers are buckled.
If we could hold that picture for a minute with that tree, because the town has really no tree maintenance. That tree has not been pruned since 1997 when it was put in.
Oh.
I mean, it's blocking, I mean, it's not good.
And also, speaking of trees, I think that the important thing is for it to have and I know this was mentioned before, a unified look of similar trees down Main Street and not a hodgepodge of trees.
Yes, yes, that's a great recommendation. Yeah.
What is this? What is that see this right here? That, what is this, like a, I don't know what you call it. It's a metal plank. I know what it is. Do you see that, or like orangey looking thing, or I don't know what you.
By the white door?
Yes. Yes.
Here.
In front on the street.
Yes, right there.
Some kind of grate or?
Yes. And what are these little round circles here? You see it here and you see it over here. You see that?
Yes.
And then you see that further down by that pole.
It might be water. Water access or basement access?
It would have to be investigated. It's in the right of way though.
Excuse me, those are utility connections for the apartments and the buildings, water and sanitary sewer.
And what is this metal grate for?
Probably water.
Same thing, it's probably a utility box that has some type of utility servicing the buildings.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So we are here at Main Street on 4th Ave, which is the end of section 1. Does anyone have any comments for this section? I know like it also goes to the school, I think on this side. So how does the traffic look like during school opening and closing hours? Any comments, feedback?
The garbage can that you see on the corner,
Yes.
I believe that's the right location for the garbage cans, like not in the way on Main Street where the doors are going to open for a parked car. I think on the corners, if we focus our garbage cans to where this location is and make it uniform across town, that's the best spot. Just my personal opinion, but you know.
Yeah. Okay, let's move forward towards from 4th Ave to 5th Ave. And here also we can see we have like some houses on one side and some commercial and housing on other side. Does anyone have any comments?
Yes. Can we back up? I think it's important to note that there are so many code violations in some of these buildings, and there's been no enforcement of code.
Wait a minute, that's my building's in that picture.
Not your building, that's not the one I'm talking about. And I think we know up and down Main Street that it is a problem where code enforcement is not taking place. And I don't want to get specific about various properties in a public forum like this, but they are well documented and they need to be addressed. And it needs to be addressed, either from the landlord or for the tenants.
Yeah. Okay.
I just want to clarify that you're discussing about things within the property and not related to the outside or street space. That's the topic today. Not that it's not relevant. I just want to make sure we record it properly.
Thank you.
Well, there's a telephone.
If we could, can you back up? Yeah, to
Yes.
a little bit. I wanted to focus on something a little on the right, near that tree well, and yep. See that little impression in the sidewalk? That was a tree. That was a tree well.
Here.
Now,
to the
one
right.
to the right.
There you
The next one, yep.
Yeah.
We have a number of these. I think somebody counted to be more than a dozen of vacated tree wells that, you know, are trip hazards at a minimum, and at some point, obviously, it'd be nice to replant trees.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point.
Trees or shrubs. Shrubs could be nice too, and then they won't get too big.
Yes. And like, I think we see one here again. So yeah. Yeah. Any other comments, feedback before we reach Brinley Avenue, I think? Yeah.
So Ashna, I have a comment. So the crossing that's coming up here, that's Fifth Ave, and that is the crossing that leads to the school.
Yeah.
And then this crossing, it doesn't have crosswalks on all four of the crossings, and there's also not a street light, and there's no buttons, I guess, to push or whatever.
Signals.
Yeah,
Right,
pedestrian
thank you.
signals.
There is a sign though, you know, the people crossing sign.
Yeah, this one.
And in the mornings and the afternoons when the school gets out, there is a police officer who helps the kids cross there. So I think that's something to note.
And to Liz's point, this should really be all ladder crosswalks, as this is non-signalized. It's a very dangerous place to cross.
Yeah, or even the raised crosswalks. I know that it is the state highway, and that's up to the DOT essentially. But
yeah, but I think we can recommend it, James. We can, right?
Very long too. It's a long crossing.
It is.
Especially for children. You either want a pedestrian timer to give them more time to cross, or maybe an island or something for the kids if they don't make it across the street.
Yeah, people run across that intersection. Not a walk, it's a cross run, not a crosswalk.
I like Liz's idea. If we did another crosswalk on the bank side, you know, it seems to me when there's two ladder crosswalks, drivers are a little more careful than if there's one.
Yeah.
So that was a great idea.
And it would be short.
So actually,
looks shorter.
Yeah. And I've seen, I don't know what exactly it's called, but in places where there's no signals or anything, they'll like paint the street, like put a mural on the street so that it calls attention to the fact that it is a crossing there.
Yes, that's a great idea. We can definitely include it in the recommendations. Yeah.
And maybe a curb extension, because that is such a long crossing for children or seniors.
Yeah, and there's also like not aligned here, so the curb extension could help with that as well. So great suggestion.
And maybe a stop bar. They should put a stop bar in front of a crosswalk where you have lots of children, so that cars aren't stopping in the crosswalk.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm so opinionated.
Okay.
The stop bar, the stop bar would never be approved by DOT in that situation. So it's highly unlikely that could be included here.
Can Bill or Debbie Kingsland give an opinion, what they think about it?
I'll just jump in here to say that the stop bars are provided before a complete stop, so a stop sign. So you can see that the cross street, both the one-way coming in from the right and the two-way street that's coming in from the left, both have stop bars. Those are provided before a stop sign. Since there's no stop sign on Main Street for this intersection,
Peter, you cut off. I just wanted to add that while in New Jersey, it's not common, the MUTCD does allow a stop bar before an uncontrolled crosswalk like this. It's just, I don't think I've ever seen one in New Jersey, but you do see it in other states.
Due to the angles, this whole intersection is a wonderful candidate for extensions on every single access. This is a really problematic intersection, but Fifth Avenue to your right there, as you can see, the sign is a one-way. So that cartway coming west on Fifth Avenue could really be narrowed down for safety for everyone with corner extensions.
Yes, Great. So let's move forward in the interest of time. do we have any comments for this street section as we move on to the next street?
These curb cuts here are not in great condition, and you'll find that more as you go down, the ones on the left. Like I said before, if they were rebuilt in concrete, it would be more accurate for the kind of traffic they get and would hold up better. Again, maintaining the pavers everywhere else in the walkways, but just in the curb cuts.
Yeah, so they're like maintenance issues.
Yeah, they're really, really bad when you get to the car wash at the end of the block.
Yeah.
So okay. I see bus, this is definitely a bus corridor. How often are the buses using Main Street?
I think that it's a pretty regular schedule. And then so at this intersection coming up, that's a bus stop on Brindley. And there's a bus shelter, and the bus stops on the right-hand side in front of the bakery, but there's no bus shelter on the right-hand side. There's one on the left-hand side. And then I think it stops again at Evergreen and 4th Ave. I'm not sure where else.
Yeah, that's the first bus shelter we've seen.
Yeah, but there are 2 previous stops if you go south on the road.
Yeah. Okay.
And so there is one bus that comes by every hour, and there's a second bus that comes by every other hour.
Pretty frequent.
Yeah, so this looks like the intersection that also goes to the train station, and it's signalized with pedestrian signals. Does anyone have any comment or feedback for this walking to the train station, how that looks like? Yeah.
So this is, to me, one of the most dangerous intersections in town. What you have on the corner is a bakery, and then there's 3 more restaurants that go down that go down Brindley, and there's no loading zone. So in the mornings, every morning around 11 o'clock, even a little bit earlier, the whole westbound lane gets totally blocked by trucks making their deliveries or doing their pickups. And so it forces everybody into the eastbound lane. And because we allow cars to park so close to corners in our town, you can't see anything. So you have cars basically sometimes coming head on there.
Yeah. That's a great observation. Issues with loading and
there is a loading zone on Main Street further up the block, but they don't use it. They just pull right. They block in all the cars that are parked there too.
Okay. Yeah. Any other feedback, observation for this intersection? Okay.
Just one thing, you might want to recognize that's a county road, Brindley Ave.
Yeah.
Just be sure that you have that in your notes.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Yep.
And also helpful. Brindley Ave does go to the school as well. The school is on an entire block between 5th and Brindley.
Thank you. That's super helpful. Here we see the park on one side, and I think it has many events during the summer. Does anyone have any feedback walking on this section of the roadway coming from the intersections? Okay.
I do have one comment.
Yes. Yeah.
When we have a lot of events in the park, there really isn't a lot of seating. And a lot of people like to come and hear the music. And unless you bring your own chair, there's really not a lot of seating.
Yeah. So like more opportunities for seating in this section.
Correct.
Yeah. Great.
This picture is great because you'll see that bench is really depreciated out and we should really look to a standardized a bench and look to place them around town. This bench is totally depreciated out.
Yeah. So maintenance of like street infrastructure, benches. Yeah. Trash cans. Okay. This is
There's another sandwich board. Make sure that's in your notes too.
Here. This one?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, that's really blocking the sidewalk.
Yeah, that one's always there, and it's always blocking the handicap accessibility to the crosswalk, and it's right across the street from the police station.
Oh yeah.
And you also have these signs here. I'm getting back to that sign ordinance. You know, those other signs that are there, they just pop up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, let's not throw the baby out with bathwater. We have a communication issue in the town. So the signs assist in communicating events. I actually don't have an objection to the sandwich boards. I like them. I think they add some flavor. They might be put in the wrong place, but just my 2 cents.
It's my opinion they just create a very cluttered appearance. And if you take a look at all the other signs around town, it's just visually not appealing. They're all different heights. They're all different.
I want to point out on this intersection, and I think on most of the intersections, there's no lighting around the sidewalk and like the crosswalks especially. And in the nighttime, it is pretty dark, you know, when you're going to cross the street.
Yeah.
So there's that one there, right? But that's not, there's nothing lighting up where the crossings are.
At the intersection, and the crossings, yeah. Okay. Let's move forward. We are only 5 minutes to noon, and I'm sorry for that. Yeah, so does anyone have any comments, quick feedback as we move towards McCabe Avenue?
I have comments about McCabe Avenue. This is the intersection I use every day, and I almost get hit every single day. Again, it's the driver line of sight issue. The cars are allowed to be parked too close to the corner. There's a crosswalk there and then a light 1 block after. So people are really speeding towards that light, and they can't see people coming out into the crosswalk there.
This intersection was reworked by DOT. If you'll notice the new truncated domes on the corners. This was, we kind of lobbied for this, but we asked that because this is a non-signalized intersection, that this should be, again, a ladder crosswalk.
Yeah. So ladder crosswalks here and issues with visibility of pedestrians. Okay.
And also, again, sorry, but there you'll see the yellow curb right there, and that's also used as a loading zone by trucks for the businesses on that street, so that further adds to not being able to see.
Like here, this part.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe that corner as well would benefit from the extensions, the sidewalk extensions.
Yeah. This could be a good place for an extension, and it could like also add some greenery and provide that needed visibility. Yes. Yeah. That's a great recommendation. Is it also a place where you would like to see a crosswalk on the other side as well, like the third side?
It wouldn't hurt.
Increase walkability.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move forward to our last section of this corridor, to Ocean Park Ave. Does anyone have any comments, any other feedback? Walking through this intersection. It does feel like a very big intersection, very wide, broad. So yeah.
So I think Ocean Park only has one crosswalk, and I don't think it has any crosswalks crossing Main Street.
Across, yeah.
Yeah, that it definitely should.
Looking for what? Rusty poles.
Again, the more crosswalks we have, the slower it makes the traffic because they're aware.
Yeah. And it looks like, are these pedestrian signals right here? Or they are also traffic?
I think they're also traffic.
They're also traffic. So no pedestrian signals here. Okay. Well, that's great. And we are getting, yes, yeah.
I had one thing. When we were closer towards the municipal building, I wanted to bring to the attention the crooked utility pole. It, you know, again, it's, I just want to keep that in mind. It's like, it looks like it's on a 40-degree angle. Okay, and another thing, now I don't know exactly where it is, but it's in this area someplace. They are rusty old poles that have nothing attached to them.
I think there's one straight ahead.
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to document to make sure that that was in the report.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, okay. Okay, thank you for your great feedback and all the points. Let's go back to our presentation really quick.
There's also no truncated domes at this intersection. So that's another, you know, problem.
Yeah.
But you'll find that as you do your study through the whole town.
Yeah.
There's none here.
Yeah. Perfect. Let's go back to the end of our audit and the debrief. From current slide, you should be able to see the presentation now. Thanks for all your feedback and comments. And if there are any additional thoughts that you have, please fill the walk audit form and you can include your photos and pictures there. Quick debrief, we discussed issues with and opportunities for bicycle infrastructure and facilities, bicycling on sidewalks, more consistent signages for these issues, and issues with visibility and seating spaces, like seating spaces along the street corridor, and issues with visibility specifically at intersections. And we could include, yeah, and for beautification, like laying the electricity wires underground and those more long-term feedback and suggestions. Yeah, so this is great. We will include all of these recommendations in the final report. And as next steps, as we said, if there is anything, I know we kind of like rushed through the second half of it, the second bit of it, but please give your additional comments and notes. You can also use the chat box and the walk audit form and its notes section to give us all your additional feedback and experience. And send it to, send your images to the email address on the screen. It will also be included in the follow-up email after this presentation.
Are they due August 4th or August 11th?
They are due August 4th.
Okay, the other one says August 11th.
Yeah, we can see your notes, Ashna. But actually, Anne, I believe they're due August 11th, right?
No, they're due August 4th.
Due August, sorry. Okay. Sorry for the confusion. The audit forms and the photos are due August 4th.
And it does say that on the audit form.
Yes, yeah.
Good. And when would the report come?
So the next steps, just to, as Ashna mentioned, and I think I alluded to earlier, I'll be sending out an email in the next day or so once we process the presentation today. It'll give you a link to Sustainable Jersey website, and on that website you'll be able to click to view the video. You'll be able to click and download the audit forms. It'll also send you to the online form, and it'll remind you that you have till August 4th to provide that comment. So we'll take your comments plus the ones that we got today, plus any that we get between now and August 4th, and use that to prepare a draft presentation of some of the conceptual ideas that we would recommend, and we'll be scheduling a follow-up approximately 1 hour public meeting with you in mid-September. And from that, we will finalize a draft report, and the local Complete Streets team will review that, and we'll get you a final report by the end of October. So that's sort of the timeline for the project. And this is my email, heasley@tcnj.edu. So if you have things that you think of and you just want to send me an email, or you have pictures that don't automatically go into the form, send them to that address, and I'll make sure that they get included and sent to the our complete project team as we develop the report.
And thanks so much. You know, Complete Streets did do a presentation for our mayor and council and the public a couple years ago. And it was very nice, but you know, at a council meeting, it never really gets digested the way it should. This is a wonderful extension of that. And I'm so happy this is available to Bradley Beach.
I want to add my thanks to everybody on the call, as well as the team that's going to be supporting us. And I have high hopes that not only will this lead to great recommendations, but also funding opportunities, like Manasquan's recent $1.7 million grant. So I have high hopes that this will lead to real action. And I think either David Brown or Al Gubitosi are going to make some closing statements.
Go for it.
I was going to say, Al Gubitosi is here. I hadn't planned a particular statement other than to, one, echo everyone else's comments that this has been very helpful. I walk up and down Main Street daily, and I saw things in your little virtual tour that I honestly hadn't really picked up on before. So the pruning of trees was eye-opening to me as I watched how many of the trees looked overgrown and out of shape. But no, I think this is a tremendous opportunity for Bradley Beach to really start to get our focus on Main Street and get organized. We hadn't really discussed this, but Liz Hernandez and the Main Street Task Force did coordinate a resident survey. And a lot of the feedback really did focus on the importance of Main Street. Even though we're often considered a beach town, that Main Street really, you know, invites people into Bradley Beach, says everything about our community, and there's so much more that we can accomplish here. So I think I share in everyone else's excitement that this group has taken us on as a project, and we're really looking forward to your recommendations. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. Asha, any last comments for the group? We're really sorry that we couldn't be out there in person, Bradley Beach in the summer. We were looking forward to it, but I think we got a good look at the town through the virtual tour. So Asha, you want to say anything else before I close out the meeting?
No, that's it. But just thank you all for your experiences and for your great feedback. This is the context that we needed for the recommendations. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.